Welcome to the CodeBreaker Mindset, where leaders share the unwritten rules for success. I'm your host, Chitra Nawbatt. Joining us today is Forest Harper, President and CEO of Inroads. Forest, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Chitra. It's a pleasure to be here to have this thought exchange with someone who has just a mind-breaking opportunity to talk through things that people probably don't normally see. So thank you.
You're super kind. Tell us about Inroads, what it's about, its impact.
Well, Inroads is the nation's leading organization that focuses on developing, identifying talented students from early on, from high school to college, to live out their dreams in their careers, entrepreneurship, and also leading their communities.
There's a lot of organizations who say they do similar things. How are you different? Bring it to life for us.
Well, it's different because off the campus of Princeton University came a student who wanted to see something different about giving all students an inclusive opportunity to be able to live out their dreams. So when he arrived in those communities that didn't have those opportunities, what makes Inroads different is that he got a vision. His vision came from Martin Luther King in 1963 on the speech on Washington and the Mall on Washington. When he heard that speech, he came back and envisioned an opportunity of a pathway to get students on through professional development. From that point, we start with ninth graders and go all the way through college. That's unique for most organizations. Not only do we do that, we match them up with corporations and government opportunities and nonprofits to seek careers in over 37 different majors. That really is distinctive only at Inroads.
Give us a sense of the numbers in terms of number of students, number of companies participating, quantify the impact.
Sure. So first of all, Inroads has been around now for 55 years. And in 55 years, we've touched and impacted over 164,000 students. Of those 164,000 students, we track about 40,000. Most of those 40,000 are in level 3 to level 1 of corporate America. Not only that, we also track their economic mobility. And these students are now mature, they're in corporate America, or they're leading governmental agencies, or they're entrepreneurs. As a matter of fact, 23.5% of our students coming through Inroads are successful entrepreneurs that own their own companies. And those kind of impact numbers drive success for years to come. Today, we now take in over 7,000 students a year. We have internships, between 500 and 1,000 internships in the college level. And at the high school level, we serve over 1,200 students in 18 cities across the U.S.
What are companies telling you that they're looking for in terms of skills, attributes from this early journey talent?
Absolutely. Companies and employers are saying we need students early in the pipeline who are focused on skills that drive job descriptions specifically. It used to be the time where it would just, give me a student, we'll help them develop, and then we'll figure a place to put them. Now it's a bit more laser focused on that job description that is focused on skills, not necessarily the general students. And so when we get that, we also ask about the culture. What is their employment culture? What kind of student are you looking for? I look for the student who's hungry or the student who's curious. And so when we figure that out, we map those students with the employers that they're looking for.
Now, you before were an employer yourself because you spent many years in corporate America.
Yes.
Tell us about your journey to Inroads, because about 30 years at Pfizer. Before that, you started in the Army in the 82nd Airborne Division. So your journey.
Well, it all started with a single parent. And my mom, we grew up in the projects of South Florida, and I got a chance to go to college. That was a gift. To be able to, she couldn't afford it. So I had to go on a football scholarship. And when I got to Morgan State University, which I think is one of the best universities in the world, frankly, in Baltimore, Maryland, I got an opportunity to be able to leave college with 2 degrees. 1, as a lieutenant in the United States Army, and 2, to graduate with a degree in social work. So I was guaranteed to have some type of employment at the college, and I did. I went to the military and served in the top unit in the military, the 82nd Airborne, where I spent about 8 years as a military officer, achieving the rank of captain, left there, and then I got to explore what it meant to be in an industry, an organization that was involved with innovation, research and development, and providing healthcare that kept people alive for longer, and that was Pfizer. I spent 28 years in Pfizer through the sales ranks, from a salesperson all the way to the head of one of the major divisions in Pfizer. And I was the first African American to lead as a vice president in Pfizer, but I left there in that role not wanting to be the only. And so I set out my course saying, what can I do to be able to ensure that there's a pipeline of inclusiveness so that others can achieve what I achieved throughout Pfizer. And it rewarded me. I was the first vice president of the African American Employee Resource Group before they became an employee resource group. That's not to brag, it's just saying it was a phenomenal opportunity for me to give back. And in doing so, I left Pfizer after 28 years, and then someone knocked at my door and said, hey, we have a role for you here at Inroads. And Inroads gave me an opportunity to be their 6th president and CEO. So for the last 15 years, I have been the president, humbly so, this president of Inroads.
So with that rich experience and pattern recognition across multiple industries, military, healthcare, now nonprofit, Inroads, let's get into the rules of the game.
Sure.
And talk about the top tailwind and the top headwind impacting your industry and specifically your organization.
Well, I would say for the past 10 years, nonprofits have evolved. Their revenue streams were narrow, very beginning, all particularly programmatic, but their fundraising revenue streams were not as strong, particularly for a middle-level nonprofit to higher. So leaders in nonprofits had to really explore and get creative on diversifying their revenue streams. That was the headwind, because people traditionally would say, are you really a nonprofit? Really? Do you have a gala? Do you have a donors? Do you have DAF funds, donor advised funds? Do you have an endowment? 80% of the nonprofits don't have endowments to be big and unique, to be able to thrive off of one day to another. So that really hit when was diversifying your revenue portfolio. And we did that at Inroads. It took about 10 to 12 years to do it, but we did it. So now we have a focus around multiple revenue streams. The tailwind is that if you are fulfilling a need that is just a disparity that still needs help, your tailwind is your cause. And your tailwind is what your impact is. So if your students are graduating on time, or you're doing what you said you would do in your mission, it's easier to get people to donate, or it's easier to get grants. But if you're not, then that's a tough one for you. So it's a really, really important part that to have that tailwind. And the gap for most nonprofits is marketing and promotions, about letting people know what you do.
So what has been an unwritten rule that you have learned and deployed in this sandbox to address either those tailwinds or, to address the headwind or to seize the opportunity of the tailwind?
Let's talk about the headwind first, okay, that diversifying that portfolio. Well, according to USA Giving Today, which is the Bible of tracking nonprofit revenue, in 2023, there was $354 billion in the philanthropic space. Of that $354 billion, 82% comes from individual donors. So one of the headwinds you had to find out, do you have a good donor giving program? And we didn't. So, and we have alumni. So we had to figure out how do we get to our alumni who are dedicated to the program to become donors. And we've been working at that with the alumni donor base strategies and a new CRM system that we're now using called Virtuous that we're ready to go with in the next month. So our goal is to tap into those individual donors, and we believe the headwinds won't be as strong coming from there. The tailwind is really the impact, the stories, and the storytelling. That is the headwind. When you can look in your 55 years of focus and impact you make, and you start to see the evidence, and you start to see those students now reaching the C-suite, like the Sunda Duckett, who is a CEO of TIAA. She came through Inroads. And part of her story is that when she came through, she would not have been there without at least Inroads being there at the beginning. That's what we want to be. When we start telling those stories, people understand what we do and the impact we make. But there are hundreds of the Sunda Ducketts She's one that has achieved and successfully to be the CEO of TIAA.
When you think about the military, you're almost 30 years at Pfizer and now Inroads. Is there a consistent written rule or unwritten rule that has contributed to your leadership success?
Absolutely. I give, first of all, my mentors credit before I even got to the military for my family. They were disciplined about respect for people, how in order to be a leader, you got to be a follower first. Those are the principles that came from my family. From the military, I not only read and believed in the leadership traits. He wrote a book on it, General Colin Powell, and I follow those. He has a book called The 14 Traits of a Leader. And when you read them, it's so common sense that I brought that from the military over into my commercial or my professional career in private sector at Pfizer. And then the last one, I'm a servant leader. My role is to be a servant leader because I think servant leaders are resilient, they're sustainable, and they respect people. And when you respect people, people follow you. And so in that, I remember a story one day where I was in my office and someone made a complaint that I had a Bible on my desk, which I had my devotion in the morning, and I put the Bible there and left it. No offense to anyone at all, but someone says, you need to do something about that Bible. So the next day I was over at Barnes & Noble. I bought my first book that combined what a servant leader is. It's called Jesus the CEO. Then I put that one on the desk and I took my Bible away. No one had any complaints. But the principles of it was about servant leadership. And servant leadership to me is treat others as you would want them to be treated. Be a follower before you can be a leader, and that will help you throughout your life.
Let's get into the pivots.
Okay.
What's a significant organization, business pivot that you've led?
Oh boy, there's so many, and some are forced and some were initiated. So I would just say that probably the two that stand out the most, I'll start with Pfizer. And one most important was about we must respect inclusion and diversity as it pertains to who we treat, because everybody's human. So when the AIDS and HIV/AIDS epidemic was here, we had a product at Pfizer that basically took care of the infection rates for a lot of the HIV individuals. And unfortunately, we weren't getting to certain communities. We knew it. We started to see it. It was particularly only in Caucasians who came forward to say that they had HIV/AIDS that we could treat, but we weren't getting to the minority communities that we knew we saw some things happen. The pivot was to get out to the HBCU medical schools, like Meharry and Howard University, to figure out what we needed to do. That pivot was strong, and once we did that, we were able to find the solutions to do that with. And then at Inroads, our number one pivot was the fact that we had to go earlier in the pipeline. Our model was traditional around college students. Well, about 2 years before COVID, 3 years before COVID, we were getting to students too late once they got to college. So we needed to build a program out to get to high school students first. That pivot led us to starting our program with ninth graders instead of waiting until they got to college. So we now have a program that's robust. We're in 18 cities across the country where we start the Inroads program at the ninth grade through the 12th grade. That was a huge pivot for Inroads.
In either of those scenarios, how do you talk about your pattern recognition? Because how do you keep your antenna alert to spot the signals? In what are those signals that's informing you, the leader, to then say, hey, you know what, we need to get ahead of this situation and pivot this way, pivot that way?
You got to keep open ears to your staff, your eyes open to your staff, because they're on the front lines. I couldn't see everything myself. So you have to, as a leader, have good ears and good eyes to pay attention to what the staff on the front lines are telling you and your community, what's happening. And so once we saw what the community was saying, that we need to get to our ninth graders sooner, it was right, and they were correct. So it's about leaders paying attention to their staff and those who report to them.
Artificial intelligence. It's the new norm. It's impacting every facet of life. Talk about a top use case at scale where your organization is investing in artificial intelligence and the outcomes.
Well, first of all, we're relatively new at the game as a nonprofit. Let me speak about that first. In our systems, but in our learning management systems, students can be able to go to a platform and be able to design what their needs are and use artificial intelligence to help them set their course on, if I want to become a psychologist, what do I need to do, and use those tools that AI provides in order to do that. But on the student side of it, they're already coming to us from colleges and higher ed already AI prepped and AI ready. So what we're doing is sitting down with the employers and saying, what skills would the students be able to have before they get to your company? Do they have AI-centered skill sets? And we're adjusting ours now. So we're early into the game. But if there's anything at all, the AI that we do use is about, let's take resume building, just period. Sounds small, but our nation for decades put so much on how good does that resume look? Does it have the right font? Does it have the right information? Should these parts go first? To your job history, should you include the Wendy's or the Dairy Queen on your job description? I'm not kidding. It's just one of those things where we teach it. But now, today, in an AI environment, these students are able to not only align the systems that can automate and integrate through AI resumes. So we've had to move with the innovation fast to keep up with the students and what the employers are asking for. So that's our bridge, is satisfying those two, students first and then the employer.
And how has that impacted stakeholder experience?
Oh, it has a lot. Our stakeholders are the students. They're our number one, that's our boss, because we make them productive, we get them success when they go from there. And the students really appreciate it. And I'll give you an example. We have a lot of student athletes that participate in our program. They're the furthest away from being professionally ready for the most part, because they're concentrating on their sports, whether they're swimmers, football players, or basketball players. Well, by the time that they go to their career center, they're almost out of college. And so we've had to be able to get them up to speed and be their career center. So that's what Inroads does, and that has enabled us to help take it from 4,000 students a year to almost 7,000 students a year that we help out get what we call career ready and employer ready.
Forrest, let's get into the magic.
Sure.
How do you define serendipity? And where has serendipity played a significant role in a business or organization outcome?
I don't have a strong philosophy for it serendipitously.
That's okay.
I think it's intentional. It's an intentional accident that two forces were going to happen at some point in some time to equal a larger and amazing output. And I'll share with you what my biggest part about serendipitous has to do with networking, okay? We all grew up, high school, elementary school, we go to college, we have a network in each one of those groups, right? You got friends, you got really close friends in school you graduated with. We also get to work, we have a network. But who would have thought that the network that you created in college, that person became a lawyer, you own a business, and you need a lawyer, and you just so happen to be in the same Starbucks as that person that day that sat down. It was only two seats, and the two of you sat down together. Oh, right? I remember you from high school. I'm looking for a lawyer. That's a serendipitous part that I say was always there, and it's the most unique one that we all forget about, is the network. It is so clean, so quiet, and it happens independently. And I'll give you an example, one that I just went through recently. So I'm looking to build a house, and so looking for an architect and a design person to help out with it. I had no clue in this area, and just so happens I'm in a Starbucks. I am having a cup of coffee, and I'm on call, and there's a seat and it basically had something spilled in the seat. And so I cleaned it out because this person needed to sit down. That person sat down, a designer. That person's not going to be my designer for my house. That's the serendipitous, I think, that happens every single day, but it's based off of this whole area about networks. And so when I say to people, build your network, because you never know when that's going to come all true, that serendipitously, somebody in that network is going to have some influence, some value, some funding, particularly nonprofits that you never thought you might have. And so to that end, that's what I think the serendipitous part's about what happens.
Forrest, what's your advice on how to cultivate the CodeBreaker mindset?
I'm a big believer that you should take some time each day to think about, don't allow yourself to wrestle with whether or not you are creative. Creative thinking breaks the code, because the code is that if you know how to decode something or you know how to code something for a breakthrough, that's one thing. That's engineering, that's a part. But creativity is the part that has no boundaries. So if you're suggesting that I want to become a doctor, but my math is not very good, but being a doctor requires math, what can creativity happen with that? You have to have your mindset around creativity. And that is the science that sort of takes and decodes what's possible. And I say that because there's a friend of mine who's scheduled to go up in Blue Origin as one of the 4 female astronauts, one of the 4 female passengers that's going up this month. Her name is Aisha Bowe, former young girl from the Bahamas, went to Michigan, became an aeronautical engineer. Who would have thought she was going to be one of the people to go up as an astronaut here very soon? It's all because of her creativity. But guess what she did? She creates a actually coding system called Lingo that my students train from. Just 10 years ago, she was doing that. Now she's getting ready to go up. And so decoding has to be able to take that creativity, don't let any limits get to you, but being able to think beyond the normal. And that's what I call decoding would do.
Forrest, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. I enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you for supporting the CodeBreaker Mindset. For more episodes, go to www.chitranawbatt.com to like and subscribe. Connect with me on social media at Chitra Nawbatt.